You know the song that's like da da na 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 na, where the top hand is only playing and it's really quiet, like only sopranos and altos are singing.
There's a few songs.
Da, 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 da. It's one of the Sacrament songs. Anyway, I did that once. Like the organ was super quiet. They're just playing the notes, and then I was like, and it was like dead silent, and I was like.
Well, you can be my son who, when the sacrament's or when the prayer finishes for the sacrament, he's like, bring out the bread! And this was during COVID, so it was only me and him and like a few select others, and it was like, oh, yes, bring out the bread.
Bring out the bread.
It sounds like bring out your dead. Bring out your dead!
Smack.
Oh,
that's a really good one too.
Monty Python?
Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Still my favorite meme. When your kid falls out of a tree. It's only a flesh wound. When you move, and then it's when you're 30 and you try to get out of bed. I can't move.
There's some very harsh truth in that.
It makes me feel better seeing a lot of other people deal with the exact same thing.
That's literally, so I'll go on Instagram and look at some of the reels just to make myself feel better about my ailments. I'm like, oh, I'm not alone.
See,
these are my people.
Here's what's funny. So my wife is a little bit younger than I am. She hasn't hit that age yet. And so she's like, oh my gosh, you're only, 20 something years old. And I'm like,
yes, but I'm
a
old
year
enough.
or two from now, you will be complaining, and
you will wake up and went, oh,
I am a 20-something-year-old who has seen much.
I picked the wrong pillow last night, and now I'm crippled forever.
You wake up with a crinked neck.
Yep.
Your back hurts.
Your knees are just gone for no apparent reason. You feel tired, but you haven't done anything.
I was reaching for soap in the shower earlier today, and like something in the back of my knee just gave out, and so I kind of just sat there, so I crippled in the shower, going, "What do I do?"
This is it. This is how I go.
This is the final moment.
This is how they're gonna find me. Shall we get started?
Sure.
No.
Okay. Welcome
ahead.
to the Twaddling Along Podcast, everyone.
Thanks.
He's Danny.
The podcast where I have to cut out huge portions of the things we talk, mainly because of Josh.
I just said.
And there we go again. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on this week's Twaddling Along podcast. We hope to see you next week. Just kidding. I'm Dan McBride, here with my brothers and co-host, Jake.
Well, I'm supposed to say something. I'm sorry.
And Josh.
You didn't let me think.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm just trying to be like Jake.
Trying to be like Jacob.
That's sacrilegious.
And it's not working out so well.
That is sacrilegious.
We're good. We have a good start.
This is our best start yet.
How about this for comments from Jake? Don't go outside. I think I've talked about this so many times, and we're going to talk about why. Don't do it. It's so easy. Just stay inside.
It's true. And Josh. See, I gave you enough time there.
Well, you already asked me, and I said I'm just trying to be like Jake. Bro.
Well, now you have to repeat what I said.
Exactly.
We're going to be talking about something today, and for all those who relate to this person and or thing, stay indoors because we may start a riot.
Josh doesn't even listen to me.
He doesn't.
Do you see that?
He literally
didn't even he said
he was
something.
supposed to copy you, and it literally was completely
he
different.
He had one small thing to say, and he didn't say it till the very middle.
Well, my ADHD was already gone. I was thinking of what I was going to say.
Right.
And so I didn't listen.
That makes sense.
This is what my belly sounds like.
Thanks, Josh.
Yes,
thanks, Josh.
Yes, it does.
It sure does sound like that, doesn't it?
Now I'm curious. Do all of our bellies sound the same? Are all our bellies brothers too?
Mine's got a little bit more deeper resonance. I think it's because I went over the belly button. It's like a deep crevice.
Yeah, when mine.
It's like an echo in there.
Okay, no, ready? I'll do the belly button.
Yep. There is a difference
when you do that one.
Hey, guess what we're talking about today, guys?
I certainly hope it's not our bellies anymore.
It is not our bellies.
I'm self-conscious.
this person could have a belly.
He could, or she could, or it could. See, this is a topic that we have actually had a lot of interest in. We've had multiple emails.
I'm pretty
to be
sure
honest.
this is why we started this
Yeah,
podcast.
we've had multiple emails requesting this one specifically, and we have had multiple people come up to us and actually talk about doing this one. Now, I'm going to start off by saying this is going to probably more than likely turn into a multi-parter just because of the sheer amount.
Part 1 of 27.
Literally, just because of the sheer amount of information out there and the sheer amount of just stories that people have, the history that's behind it. We're going to do our best to kind of at least just introduce the idea of it.
No, pause right there. It's not because of the information. It's because we're straight up nerds.
We are a little
And we have
nerdy when it comes
researched
to
a
this.
lot of this.
And by research, we listened to a lot of really dumb videos. Oh, sorry, that was me.
It's true though. And that's the other hard part about this is it's this is of course our paranormal week. And so this is a paranormal subject kind of. And the reason I say kind of is because I think that we're going to get into where the story comes from, both from like the mystical, magical, paranormal side, but I also want to just talk about kind of the story of, the people that kind of made up the story also, kind of some of the hoaxes that are behind it, some of the bad videos and terrible Discovery TV shows that are behind it too.
Spoilers, it's all a hoax.
It's all a hoax, Jake says.
Or is it?
There you go. Guys, we're talking about Bigfoot today.
Bigfoot. You
The
mean me?
Sasquatch.
Because I got a
Crap, I studied the
Bigfoot?
Yeti.
Ah,
You
crap.
guys need to be more, detailed about this.
Don't tell me what to do. Yeah, Bigfoot has actually been our number one kind of requested episode. And there's a really good reason. It's because Bigfoot has been in the zeitgeist of like American culture for at least since the 50s, but probably a long time before that.
Now, for those of you who don't know what zeitgeist mean, because I didn't, it's poltergeist cousin.
Poltergeist.
This is my cousin Zeitgeist. Hello.
So poltergeist comes out of the television, zeitgeist comes out of your nose. Anyway,
I try to bring just a little bit of culture, a little bit of something in here.
I really didn't know what that meant when you said, when you
Zeitgeist?
texted it, I was like, what the heck is zeitgeist?
Zeitgeist is an awesome word, and I use it all the time now. Ever since I learned what it was.
Well, now I'm gonna bring up a list of really, smart words, and I'm gonna try using them throughout this podcast.
I love it. Jake will be very verbose throughout
And
this podcast,
I won't.
and Josh won't. So let's talk about a little bit about Bigfoot, just in general. For those and I don't think there's many, but there are at least a few people out there that don't know of the legend of Bigfoot. Bigfoot is supposedly an ape-like creature that exists within the United States and elsewhere. And we'll talk about the elsewhere places, but I want to kind of focus on the United States, mostly in the forested and deeply forested, for that matter, areas of the United States. It's commonly associated with the Pacific Northwest. But that being said, there are stories coming everywhere. Anywhere that has any kind of forest seems to kind of spawn some kind of story of a giant, hairy, ape-like creature wandering about. The big stories of Bigfoot kind of came out in the 50s, where there started to be
LSD.
Yeah, probably. Where there started to be stories coming out of lumber camps about large ape creatures leaving behind giant footprints. There's the Patterson-Gimli film. That's the really famous film of the people that caught Bigfoot walking away, and you get that lumbering side Bigfoot. And it's used in every cultural aspect. From here to breakfast, when it comes to Bigfoot, you can buy stickers of Bigfoot walking.
Don't ask Danny how many of his shirts
I have a lot of
Bigfoot.
I do have a lot of Bigfoot stuff.
Yeah, you do?
Not just like shirts. I also have like keychains, and I don't know. Got a little 3D printed. I like Bigfoot. Now, and that's I'm glad this has fallen to me, because I do like Bigfoot, but I want to put a big caveat out there right off the bat. Although I really love the folklore of Bigfoot, and I love the stories of Bigfoot, I am still actually probably more on the skeptical and dubious side of whether Bigfoot exists or not, only because the idea of a giant hidden ape in the forest to me just seems a little wonky, especially considering that the population size required for them to kind of continue going, we would most likely have seen something. Now, that once again, that being said, there are a lot of experts in the field of Bigfoot that will say, well, there's plenty of reasons why we could explain that away. I mean, number one, we didn't know about gorillas for an incredibly long time. Number two, if it had any kind of sub-level human intelligence, maybe they're burying their dead, maybe they're just sneaky, there's just so many different
ninjas.
things. Yeah. So where should we start?
I think we should go all the way back to beyond the beyond.
I'm going to sit here and boondoggle.
What is boondoggle?
It's valueless work done to create an appearance of activity.
I see. Well, go ahead and boondoggle for us, Jake. Where should we start with the Bigfoot?
I think we should start at Gigantopithecus.
Oh, interesting. You really are going right to the
beyond
very
the
back.
beyond.
Josh is being perspicacious.
Yes.
Jake, it helps if you're able to read the words. It doesn't sound like you're reading them off a list.
Perspicacious.
Perspicacious. Good word usage, Jake. I would have never thought of that word before.
Danny's being...
What am I being, Jake?
I was about to use a word, but it means to be present everywhere. So,
Anyway,
ubiquitous.
I like it. So let's talk about Gigantopithecus.
now Gigantopithecus, for all those who
I just love that word.
Gigantopithecus.
Oh my gosh, that's a gigantic.
And do you know why it's called Gigantopithecus?
Oh,
because
dear.
it was a giant. Jeez.
A giant what, Josh?
Pithecus.
And what is a Pithecus, Josh?
It's an ape-like creature.
Okay.
No, Gigantopithecus was a giant ape that lived in China, southern China, to be exact, from the early to middle Pleistocene era. So about, like 2 million to approximately 200,000 years ago.
Yes.
So this is where a lot of people believe a lot of the characteristics of Bigfoot might have come from, because the bones that have been found of Gigantopithecus match what people describe Sasquatches.
Don't they believe it's an evolutionary descendant?
Yes, we descend from Gigantopithecus.
We do?
No, we do not.
I'm just kidding.
Oh,
But thanks for trying.
I thought Bigfoot did. And
No, so where this comes from is a lot of people believe that of one of two things. Number one, that either Bigfoot or the Yeti specifically have evolved from Gigantopithecus and have kind of remained at higher levels of elevation, which is why we just don't see them very often. That's more of the argument for the Yeti. Gigantopithecus has a lot of the trademarks of like an orangutan.
Yeah, and that's
not
their
as
descendant.
yeah,
is
not as
orangutan.
gorilla-like, but more orangutan-like. And that's
Orangutan.
there's actually some very high, I shouldn't say high ranking, but some pretty famous biologists that actually believe the Yeti is more than likely just a highland orangutan that, because it's so cold, only walks on its feet, which have a little bit more of kind of a firmer.
So in the new Jungle Book,
Yes.
the giant ape that sings the song
Is a Gigantopithecus.
is a Gigantopithecus.
Yeah.
Gigantic.
Gigantopithecus. Giganto meaning large, Pithecus being the Hindi word for ape.
Yep, there you go.
That is what Gigantopithecus means.
Yeah, so
Oh, hey, since we've been talking about it, it's the first thing that popped up when I typed in J.
that was kind of the reason I wanted to bring up was
my conversations.
this is one of the scientific possibilities of what Sasquatch and or Yeti or related things are.
Yeah, there is some thought, especially in evolutionary biology, that a lot of our fears, a lot of the things that we have some kind of a fear response to, is something locked in our evolutionary past. And there's probably some pretty good reason why we should have been scared of the Gigantopithecus. It was a huge, like mammal creature that could have outcompeted us for resources. And so there is some people that believe the whole idea of the Sasquatch and Yeti is us just kind of tapping into a very old part of our DNA fear. And so maybe there isn't anything out there, but our brains still think, oh, maybe there is some hairy, awful Gigantopithecus that's wandering around.
But the common belief is that it died out because it ran out of bamboo.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would die out if I ran out of bamboo too.
It's kind of the panda bear of the ape world.
So I looked up Gigantopithecus, and for some really weird reason, it has a kind of size chart, and in that size chart is Chewbacca. I'm a little confused why that needed to be included. I guess Chewbacca was 2.28 meters, where
Excellent.
a Gigantopithecus was about 3.5 meters.
So 3.5 meters.
That's
That's
about 10
big.
feet. Yeah.
That's what, over 10 feet.
He was the size of Goliath. Goliath was a Gigantopithecus.
Goliath with a...
That would be terrifying.
There you go. There's a whole conspiracy. The other kind of side to the whole Gigantopithecus thing is what Josh said, is it could just be a leftover fossil, I think is what they call, or leftover species, one that hasn't kind of evolved for a long time.
You just love that. You're just leftover species.
You're just
Yeah.
kind of leftover.
I mean, humans are kind of leftover species after all the fun that, we went through.
Well, and the crazy thing is 200 to 300,000 years ago, humans were very much around and very much doing things. Like we weren't in between evolutionary sections. We were the Homo sapien at the time.
I would have kept one as a pet.
So
Can you imagine? This is Chuck.
which brings up one of my favorite movies.
Chuck the Bigfoot?
Yes, Chuck the Bigfoot.
Oh.
Harry and the Hendersons.
Oh, Harry and the Hendersons.
With John Lithgow.
I've never watched that.
You haven't really?
I know. I think I've only seen the end when
Aren't you a John Lithgow fan?
I am, and so I'm surprised I haven't seen it.
It is a fantastic movie.
I just remember the get out of here.
Where he punches Bigfoot in the face. And Bigfoot's like,
you monster.
This is after like the Bigfoot buries all of his trophies in his house, all of the deer heads. It was very strange. Excellent movie though. Had a great time with it.
I sunk down in my chair. I need to adjust my mic. I'm sorry.
So that is one of the, that could be where we're getting some of the whole Bigfoot idea from, is the Gigantopithecus. However, the whole idea of a hairy man-like creature is kind of a universal culture thing. I mean, we talked a little bit about the Philippines a couple of weeks ago, where we talked about the hairy man in the mountain. I can't remember what it was called. Jake, do you remember what that was?
No, I need to look it up. It's a long name.
Yeah. So, and it really is like everywhere, this idea that in the mountain there is most of the time benevolent, but kind of sneaky or what do they call trickster-ish, some hairy creature in the mountain. And even in like early U.S. accounts and early U.S. newspapers, they never called it Bigfoot. Like that's not, the Bigfoot nomenclature didn't come until well into like the 20th century.
I'm a Mongo.
The Amamongo.
I'm a Mongo.
But the Bigfoot description would very much be like associated with the crazy man or wild man or hairy man in the mountains.
I say the hairy man is kind of the main one that the Native Americans kind of,
Yes.
that was their, because isn't that just what that interprets to?
Hairy man.
I think so.
Let's look it up because I might be speaking falsehoods.
No, I think that you're actually right. I think that Sasquatch, I actually have, let's see, a whole bunch of lists of the Bigfoot, Sasquatch, different names of them. Hold on, let me see if I can pull it up. As we're doing that, though, one of the things that I do want to talk about is sometimes we take Native American folklore and we kind of repurpose it into our own culture a little bit.
Which is a human. If we want to talk about human conditions, we tend to do that. We take someone else's and morph it into what we want it to be.
The other thing is what we call, or what sociologists call, the sacred Indian, which is the idea that the folklore and teachings of Native Americans should somehow be held at a higher level than some of the other things that are out there. And I want to kind of just dispel that and just say that like every culture has stories. And most of the time the stories that these cultures are telling are stories that are supposed to teach some kind of lesson. You know, they're morality tales. We've talked a whole lot about morality tales in the past. And so I don't want to just be like, oh, well, because this Native American tribe was saying that there was a hairy man, then it must be true. It has to be the case. So did we get that list yet?
Oh, was I supposed to pull up that list?
No.
Oh, okay.
It was me.
It does. The Sasquatch is an Anglicized version of the Sasquatch, which translates to hairy man or wild man.
There you go.
In the language of the Sistales First Nation. I don't know how to pronounce that. I apologize.
You know, I'll say this. This is coming way to more modern times of, you know, mountain men. If you looked at them in photos of the later 19th century, so the last of the 1800s, they looked like weird men, hairy. And so, like, because they were living off by themselves a lot of the time. And so it could easily be possible that this Sasquatch idea came from just, you know, nomadic people that just left communities.
Lost tribes or just
they wear
someone with
buffalo hide.
Well, and they also talk about like they even talk about like people with extreme agoraphobia, you know, that could have just gone up into the hills and they were friendly if someone came around, but they probably weren't taking care of themselves. Got super hairy. So,
I mean, we talked about the same kind of concept when we talked about I almost said Winnebago, the Wendigo.
Exactly.
The Winnebago.
Oh my gosh. It's a Winnebago.
Okay, so just a couple of the names. And once again, most of these names are actually translated into the hairy man in the mountain. So we already talked about Sasquatch. The Chinook people used the name Skookumen. Or Skookum, which just literally translate to powerful or strong. The Lakota actually has a really cool name that's called the Chiatanka, which is translated to the big elder brother. And you actually see this outside of the Lakota. I know that the Utes have something very similar. The Navajos have something similar. Where I
listened to someone from the Navajo Nation that talked about
that he is
like the big older brother.
Yeah,
he's the watcher of the forest.
The Ojibwe have the Sabe,
and that's the one that I had up in where I was living in Canada. Was that I would be warned about. Don't go into the forest because of the subway.
Yeah, we do actually also have the Wendigo is considered to be a Bigfoot-like creature in some of the Algonquin things. Like it could be there. Let's see, I don't even know how to say this. The Iroquois have one that's called Otne Yarhe or Janoskwa, which literally means the hairy rock skin giant.
Native Americans just had such cool names for things.
They really have a bunch of cool names. Here's one. The Ba-Wis is from the Tsiminchian people. I'm sorry, I probably just ruined that. Just absolutely ruined that. So there's a whole lot of things that even though the Bigfoot, like I said, the Bigfoot name didn't come until the 1950s. More than likely, we were hearing Bigfoot-like stories from very, very early on in this country. Very, very early on.
Mm-hmm. I mean, Teddy Roosevelt even had an experience with either hearing about it or he actually experienced a Bigfoot of some type. So
I actually have that here too.
Yeah, but I'll just bring this up. I think one of the things that we should talk about is, like Danny was saying earlier, that a lot of the stories of Native Americans, but also of mountain men and something, were to teach lessons. And so in order to preserve forests or mountains from, people knocking down trees or whatever, or whatnot, maybe this idea of the protector was taught to children, or things of, there's someone out there who is going to protect these trees, and so we don't want to disturb this sacred place.
Kind of like the sacred teaching kind of thing.
The Lorax.
The Lorax is a small Bigfoot.
Yep.
I am the Lorax of the trees. Yeah, so here we go. So this isn't a book that was published called The Wilderness Hunter, and it was written by Teddy Roosevelt himself. And there's just a quick story of Roosevelt talking to a guy by the name of Bowman, and they talk a little bit about hunting something. Now, it never comes out and says Bigfoot, obviously, because Bigfoot was just not something that they talked about. But they talked about there was foul-smelling odor. There was big hulking shapes that were looming in the distance. There were noises and sounds that were very common that we actually kind of hear from Bigfoot hunters nowadays, whether you want to believe that stuff or not. And I'm still a little dubious. But there was traps being destroyed. There's just kind of the hallmarks of what would be a Bigfoot. They just don't ever come out and say, it is the Bigfoot that we're hunting.
Yeah, just because, I mean, technically the Bigfoot wasn't the name of anything yet, since that was in the early 1900s, So
I mean, there's so many. It's very interesting to me, and this is true for all of the folklore stuff that we've kind of covered on the paranormal side of things. Of where does this story actually come from? You know, we've talked a little bit about it there, but why is it so widespread? How has it become such a big part of our culture that there are even Discovery Channel shows about it, and
several,
and there's books written about it. There's movies about it. It's just such a part of our culture now.
I say, as I researched like half of our other paranormal activity topics, Bigfoot was always either a recommended on the side, or it would autoplay that next. And usually I'd get caught in a swirl of them listening to Bigfoot stories.
And here's what I think is very interesting is, you said that it kind of became a popularity in the United States, at least during the 1950s.
Yeah, 1958 to actually be like very, very specific.
And I find that super interesting because that was after World War II, about 10 years after.
Yep.
It was after, the Great Depression, all this stuff, where people started doing recreational activities a lot more. So they were visiting the outdoors. They were going to national parks. People were starting to be comfortable because the economy, everything was booming in the 1950s. And so people were experiencing things that they may not have experienced before and may have come across things that they couldn't describe.
Yeah.
And so I find it fascinating that all of a sudden Bigfoot came out of nowhere when in reality people were invading the areas that Bigfoot could have been spotted.
Sure, absolutely. And that's the other thing is that we kind of went through like a third manifest destiny. Mm-hmm. That's when people were moving to the suburbs. That's when people were kind of the urban sprawl was really taking place right in that early 50s to like early 1960s. So we were knocking down forests and we were building houses.
Yeah,
exactly. Isn't that interesting? That's when, aliens and UFOs kind of became more of a thing too.
You know what's interesting? So I actually was reading something. We're going to go on just a little tangent on the side. Sorry,
what? We're twaddling.
We're twaddling. Both Bigfoot and aliens and UFOs really came about during this time because this was also a very popular time for men's magazines. It really was.
Stinking
so,
men.
So like out
GQ.
men's. You laugh, but
I know.
No, GQ, Men's Outdoors, Life, like all of these big magazines were just wanting stories of men being men, and for a man to be a man, go out into the woods and hunt something that's legendary. So you have these stories not only of just Bigfoot, but like mutant grizzlies or everything like that. And the same is true for aliens. It was the idea that men could overcome something great. We always won over the aliens. It was never like...
And it's important to bring up the quote-unquote war we were in at the time was the Cold War.
Yeah.
You wanted media to show the other country that was involved of, hey, we're beating out aliens. We're, shooting these huge Goliaths of grizzly bears because we will always be one step ahead of you, kind of thing.
You know what's so funny about that though? With big feet, I like to say that's the plural for Bigfoot.
Or is it Bigfoots?
Ooh.
Dun, dun, dun.
Or is it Bigfoot?
We'll have a whole
just
episode
like Moose and Moose.
Just dedicated to that.
But what's really interesting about that is in all the stories I hear, it's always you shoot him and he runs away.
There's
never really a one. I mean, there might be the one off where it's like, I think there's one where they found a cub of some type that they kept for a while. But with Bigfoot, it's like they shoot and then he always just runs away, or he causes absolute havoc for a little bit and then flees when light comes up or something like that.
Yeah. But I mean, if you think about like the serialization of stories, of course, that's how you want your story to end. You want your story to end as we almost triumph, but then he almost gets away. Tune in for our next, edition or episode.
Is that how we need to leave our podcast each time?
Tune in next time to find out if Jake does go outside. Dun, dun, dun.
Surprise, I have to go home. I'm tired.
Yeah, so like a bunch of, not only magazines, but it was also the time of like super cheap trade paperbacks. I don't know if you guys remember at Grandma and Grandpa's house. Grandma and Grandpa used to have downstairs in their basement, they had a whole bookshelf that was like simple comics that were like newspaper comics that were like compilations. So they had like things like BC, or they had Hagar, the horrible. Yeah, I've got a couple of them too. But they also had really, really cheap like kids books at the time, like younger children books that were always adventure books. So they had like I Became a Millionaire Boy, or they had like Visitors from Mars, or they had like what we would consider to be like just cheap throwaway books that were 99 cents on the corner that you would get to kind of keep your kids entertained. And I remember there was one that they had, and I wish I would have kept it. I wish. But it was one of these books that was about Bigfoot, and it was about a boy that was kind of in a hatchet scenario where he had to go live off in the woods somewhere because of, his dad lost his job or some, there's always some reason why the kid has to go off into the woods, and he tries to go fishing and Bigfoot stops him. And the whole book is about how he's trying to outwit this Bigfoot character. And it was honestly, I read it when I was a kid up there because it's, they're the Goosebumps of their age. They're just like a simple book. And I can't stop thinking, like, were people tired of war? Were they tired of the Nazis or the bad guys? And they just needed to have something else be the bad guy.
Something inhuman.
Yeah.
Ooh.
See, we're moving away from the paranormal, and we're getting into more of the human condition.
We need to get back to paranormal, Danny. What's some stories?
You got some spooky stories? Yes, I do.
Because then we can talk more about some other things that go with it.
I think we should also bring up kind of what sparked our interest, at least for me, and that's Uncle.
Was that your belly?
That must have been.
It's because of all of the peanut butter crunch you've been eating.
It was just, I could hear that.
It's
so
a big
plain as day. Anyway, sorry, continue.
But the stories that we were told growing up, at least a certain story,
that is very true,
of the Utah white ape. And I think that impacted us, like I said, at least me, of like, oh my gosh, there must be things out there, because our uncle who told the story was dead serious.
He was
about
convinced.
It. He was
convinced that he saw it. Yeah,
and
we're not going to go. I want to do a whole like Utah white ape stuff and talk about that. But just to simply state it, our uncle was coming home, I believe, from a dance.
No,
from a youth activity.
Or youth activity. Yeah, something along those lines.
And it was during
Ted Bundy.
So he had to take the young one home.
He was. So there was already some kind of spookiness in the air, really heightened senses. But where my grandparents' house was at the base of a canyon. I mean, it was very, very close. And I didn't even think about it growing up, but like literally a hop, skip, and a jump.
5 minutes down the road.
And not even 5 minutes. Yeah. Like literally like 5 minutes on foot and you're in the canyon. Yeah. Anyways. And as he was sitting there, he turned around and he saw a white ape, a not a monkey. And he was very clear about this. It wasn't just a little white monkey, but a white furred ape that was, and I can't remember if he was sitting in a tree or sitting on a fence or something.
I thought he was next to the house and then he jumped the fence.
Yeah, or something like that. It was just...
Yeah, he was sitting and then he ran up on the fence, jumped on the roof, and then fled into the night.
And so this was a story that, I mean, for us, because we all heard the story when we were really, really young, it spooked the heck out of me.
Which is funny because then later on, when our other younger cousins came around, he's like, I don't want to scare them. I was like, hey, you scare the bejeebus out of us.
You really messed us up. So you tell them right now.
But that story for me opened my eyes to the possibility.
Yeah, there could be something out there.
Someone near me believes at the very, like, his soul believes this. And so maybe there is something, you know.
Well, and mine was Dad sharing about his cousin that was in Arizona and
it was
went
his
up.
Missionary companion.
But they are related.
Cousin.
They're also cousins.
Yeah, and he went into the mountains. And didn't he go? What's the mountain that's superstitious mountain?
The Superstition Mountains in the Box Canyons.
Yeah, he went there to hunt, and he was with a horse. And during the night, his horse started getting really uneasy, and he suddenly had like a really bad odor and something, and then a noise, and then he pulled up his gun or whatever, and then whatever it was,
he chased
ran
it.
away.
Yeah,
so.
he chased it, and not only did it run away, but he chased it to one of the edges of the Box Canyon, which is a sheer cliff, and that whatever he was chasing went up the cliff. And this guy was, you know, as the way Dad tells him, obviously we're telling it in the third part, like 3 levels down, but the way that Dad tells it is this was a person who knew the outdoors. This wasn't just
raised, you know.
Yeah, he knew in his bones these places, and he didn't know what he was chasing. And the funny thing is the way that this was before this. I mean, we heard this story well before the Bigfoot like shows came out. Maybe there was like an unsolved mysteries that might have had something to do with it, but the media that we have today, the things that he talked about are what they talk about.
Yeah.
The weird noises, the chirping, almost like cries,
The bad smell.
the terrible smell.
Yeah. And he said, remember that
The throwing of the rocks.
Yep.
Remember, there was rocks that were being thrown. And then what amounts to something had to be bipedal and have control of its hands to climb something.
And it was a banshee yell, remember, that he heard echo.
Yeah.
And that's what scared him to get out of his tent to begin with, because it was not necessarily pushing trees down, but it was big enough that it was making the trees shake.
So, I mean, we were pretty primed from a very early age to kind of look at Bigfoot in a very different way than I think that we even sometimes look at like the ghosts or the alien side of things. You know, I heard more creepy what's out there in the woods stories growing up than I did ghost stories or alien stories.
Well, I also think the reason is we came from a father who liked to explore, go off on his own on these random things. And I think he researched a lot of the times these type of things that occurred in those areas, and he would go looking.
Dad doesn't have a lot of fear of.
It didn't pass down to me.
So I was actually going to ask, just in general, do you guys have a fear of the woods because of the stories like this?
No.
No.
I don't have a fear of the woods because of Bigfoot.
Is it because you're armed to the teeth when you go into the woods, Josh?
Most of the time. But the thing that scares me the most are other people in the woods.
Oh, 100%.
So Bigfoot, I've come across bears. I mean, when we went hunting, we found bear stuff everywhere.
Oh, yeah,
and so, you know, bears were nearby.
But bears don't smell.
No,
Not
bears
like
don't
that.
smell. So I'm not scared of anything in the woods, moose, deer, whatever, like you said, because usually I'm armed when I go in the woods, but other people in the woods, and that's why Bigfoot could be, because if it is an intelligent thing, that could be a very scary situation. That it's hunting me. I'm being hunted.
See, I've never, I think I'm in the same boat. I'm more scared about what's in there. I'm more scared of the bears. I'm more scared of like a moose running right over the top of me in the middle of the night.
Yeah, that's me.
Or a tree falling in the woods. And I don't know if I necessarily am scared at all of the Bigfoot, but what it does do, and I hate that my mind works like this, but if I'm sitting by a fire out in the woods and I'm camping, my mind will eventually get to the Bigfoot.
Yep.
You know what I'm talking about?
You're gonna listen for that yell or whatever.
Exactly. I
Or
really
the
am,
crashing.
And
or
Jake,
the
I don't know if you've had this, but I found this out when hunting. when you're out hunting, you're listening, and all of a sudden the adrenaline kicks in, and you hear everything. Every leaf blow in the wind, and so literally your senses are so heightened that you if you're not trained enough, you shoot everything that moves. And so
you really are. There is something that like turns in your head.
See, and for me, it's the opposite. It's so quiet for me that a noise is, even if it's small, is so much more than that. But I mean, like, as Danny talked about, like, I mean, you guys already know I'm skeptical of majority of this stuff. It would be cool if Bigfoot existed. Like, I just think that would be really cool if, like, someday we're like, oh, look, it's a Bigfoot. But I would be so much more terrified of, a bear. But the big thing I'm really terrified of, mostly because I have been in the presence of one, is a big cat, like a cougar.
Oh, yeah. Which I will tell you, some of the videos that I watched, it's a big cat. I mean, it's definitely like a cougar or a puma.
And that's the other thing is, even
which I think is even more terrifying than a Bigfoot. I mean,
see,
and that's a real thing. Yeah.
And most of the time, the big cats will stalk you for a long period of time before you even realize that they're there.
Well, and that was my thing, is I was going and checking stuff, and you just get this perception that something's there and you can't see it. But then I started finding the big paw prints. I was finding, feces and stuff like that. And it was like, this is weird. Something's wrong. And then again, you just feel weird. And finally, I'm just like, okay, I'm going to leave.
Yeah.
And then, later that day, they found a cougar right where I was.
Yeah.
And they had to take it down. And it was like, okay, that's what it was.
I think there's a reason why they shut down neighborhoods when cougars or mountain lions come out of the mountains into, areas. Because they're kids. I mean, if they feel that they can shape you up or size you up and they realize they have a chance,
they will take you out.
They'll take you out. So kids are a huge target.
I mean, even like something as simple as in California, in the foothills, you had coyotes.
Yeah.
And the coyotes would take pets all the time. And so you think of something bigger coming after you. And it does make me go back to that idea of maybe there's just something in our shared DNA, that deep part of our mind that is just fearful of an ancient thing, that hunted humans. Because it would not surprise me if something like the Gigantopithecus, or something that we don't even know about because of just how incomplete the fossil record is, was something that was chasing us and taking us out. Even something like the Neanderthal. I mean, there's a lot of
blasted Charles.
So I don't know. That the only other thing that kind of brings me pause when we talk about Bigfoot and we talk about stories, though. And I think that we'll not get into too many stories this time, because I think that's a good next podcast for the Bigfoot, is actually compiling a bunch of stories and kind of telling stories like we did with the Wendigo. But we were joking a little bit before about a Jeff Foxworthy, the Jeff Foxworthy comedy special, where he talked about why is it that they always get the yokels to like talk about the alien abductions and everything like that. And I've been thinking about that a little bit, and I started thinking to myself, we have cultural biases, and we think of those people as dumb world-wise. You know what I'm talking about? Like, you obviously don't, you didn't finish high school, blah, 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 whatever goes through your head. However, aren't those the people that would know the most? Aren't the yokels the ones that are out in the woods the most, that are hunting the most, that are innately connected to the surroundings around them the most? And wouldn't those be the ones that we should actually probably be paying attention to and listening to when it comes to Bigfoot?
Depends if they're drunk or not.
That's true.
No, but they are going back to their natural instincts.
Yeah. Well, not only just that, but you think about how well do you know this neighborhood that we're in right now? I mean, remember, for those who don't know, we're in our parents' basement, and this is where we do our podcast.
And this is where all of us were raised.
And we were raised here, yeah. And some of us haven't left. Oh, but how many of you, if I asked you, some random trivia about this place, you'd probably know it, right? Even though you've been gone for a little while. People have that kind of knowledge about the woods around their house. So if something weird is happening, like Dad's cousin who had that encounter in a canyon that I'll bet you anything, he could have told you what rocks were and where they were. Shouldn't we be kind of listening to him?
And see, this is where I'm going to be your devil's advocate in the sense of I do believe there's Bigfoot.
Oh, Josh is a believer.
I am a believer because, and this is a big because, there is enough witnesses, quote unquote,
Sure,
that scientifically speaking, if someone witnesses something enough times, then it becomes a theory.
Right.
Now, you can't
Not a
necessarily...
fact.
Not a fact.
Yeah. I see what you're
It's
saying.
a theory. And I believe that because humans are not everywhere. Even though people are saying we're super overpopulated, yeah, in some parts, yes. But there's still a lot of nature out there. And there's a lot of places that humans don't go to often. I believe that that's where these apes and or Bigfoots are. They are
Big feet.
big feet. They were pushed, I think, when we first started going west in the United States. They were there, but then were pushed just like other animals and things
Sure.
to the further frontier.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be surprised if you go to Alaska in the heart of no man's land.
If there's something up there.
That's where you find
It is a thought. I mean, there are certain creatures that I think are just much more wary of humans than others.
I mean, I will say this. There is apes everywhere on the earth. Except where?
like monkeys.
Monkeys.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Except for North America.
Yeah.
Now, do I believe they've been hunted? Yes. I think that humans first in the American continents, there were giant apes here. And they were probably hunted to extinction because who wouldn't shoot a huge hairy thing, coming after them? I think there are still some.
That's interesting, Josh. It's an interesting theory.
I also lived in Canada, and there's a lot of hairy things out there.
There's many hairy things. Well, and I mean, we talked about the Pacific Northwest being a big spot for the Sasquatch, but I mean, there's also the skunk ape, which is down south. There's a whole ton of stories up in New England. And it is one of those things that a lot of people are claiming to have seen something for that not to be anything. Now, people are prone to mass hysteria also.
What?
We do.
What?
That would be a very interesting human condition to talk about, mass hysteria sometimes, because it is a very real thing and can lead to some very dangerous, horrible things happening. But you have to wonder if people are like generally fearful people who have a little bit more tendency to believe in the paranormal. They're probably going to interpret what they're seeing in the woods more as a Sasquatch than they are going to be as a bear.
And I just thought of this. Imagine if you're in Ireland during the potato famine.
Yeah.
Early 1800s, later 1800s, whatever. You come over, you've lived in a city your entire life. You've never seen a deer. You've never seen a bear. You've never seen... The closest thing you've seen to a bear is a freaking badger. You come over and immediately you go out into the Midwest or Western United States and you see a man in the woods with deer skin, buffalo skin, whatever skin on, big burly beard, long hair. Wouldn't that freak the crap out of you?
Oh, it would be
They had never seen a frontiersman in their life because they had lived. And so I wouldn't be surprised if that's also where it could have started, where these people from other parts of the world that had never left the small town that they had been in, and then they came out here and, oh my gosh, there's something different.
Yeah, well, and that's honorable. I mean, you hear and can read about accounts of like when Europeans first started like hearing stories about like giraffes, or elephants, or even the rhinoceros, and them just being completely baffled and bewildered and literally believing they were mythological. Even within our own the King James Bible, there are
Unicorns.
the Leviathans, there's unicorns, it's just this idea of maybe that we're just mistranslating something. Maybe we're just maybe we literally did miss them. Maybe they really did exist up until the 1950s and they just all died out and we just haven't found their bones yet.
Yeah.
There's so many different things that they could be.
Men in Black.
Now, once again, this is part one, everybody, and I know we've twaddled quite a bit here. I want to get into a couple of things in the future episodes. Okay, number one, I want to talk about the stories like we talked about. I want to compile a bunch of stories about Bigfoot
because there's some good ones.
There are some, not only good ones, but freaky ones.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the Patterson-Gimli film because I think it's a very interesting story just in general, whether you believe it or not. And a lot of people don't believe it. And I completely understand why. I'm one of them. I'm like, oh, that's a guy in a monkey suit. But there's a lot of people that say it's not. One of the other things I want to talk about is the idea that Bigfoot is not just an animal. And you guys have probably heard this one quite a bit. We might even get into some of the folklore of our own area. Specifically, is Bigfoot Kane?
Which is something that we heard growing up quite a bit.
Yeah. Did you ever hear that, Jake?
Yeah.
like
Jake's a non-believer.
BS. Oh, I'm sorry.
Not something that Jake believes in.
No, but that is part of
it's part of
our religious culture.
Yeah, it is something that
that's something that is believed in. Because we just because we're semi close to some of the reservations and stuff. We grew up with people, third parties sharing experiences where they were on reservations and dealt with
some
unknown creatures and the belief like that. So
I want to talk about all of that.
We also have to talk about how Bigfoot is not only from this dimension.
And that's the other thing that I want to talk about, which is for those of you that have ever read A Hunt for the Skinwalker by Colm Kelleher, that is one of the things that he says. Oh no, they're interdimensional beings,
which is why their footprints just end sometimes.
They just end.
And
it's definitely not.
And this brings up another reason that Danny highlighted, and this will be a little sneak peek into the future, but Bigfoot sightings happen around cave systems.
Yeah.
But also UFO sightings.
They're
very, very similar.
Usually a bright blue light or a bright light of sort that is accompanied
by it. Yeah.
So our big feet, say Jake, I followed you.
Thank you.
Are they just aliens visiting our world?
It could be.
Or they're just as surprised as we are. What the heck is that? And they're running across the forest.
So there is a story, and this is also going to be just a sneak peek. There is a story that has the unfortunately funny name of the Wookiee-like Bigfoot creature.
Ooh, yes. I like it.
Where the Chewbacca creature. And it sounds funny to begin with. It is one of the scariest Bigfoot encounter tales that I have ever heard, where this person, whatever they encountered, and I'm more inclined to think that they've just either lost their mind or they encountered something real bad out there. But this encounter was something really intelligent. We're not talking animal intelligence. We're talking true blue, human-like intelligence out there.
So if you want to hear more, keep listening because we will talk about it. But also, if you want us to visit the Bigfoot Museum, which I can't remember where it is, but
I think it's in Oregon.
But supposedly there's fur, there's teeth, there's foot artifacts. Yeah. Leave a comment, and we may think about doing a twaddling about where we go and travel to this museum.
We're going to force Jake outside of his house and to confront the Bigfoot, where he will probably moan a lot.
And that's the thing. We may do
good thing I have a Game Boy.
We may do a podcast out in the middle of nowhere mountains, and we may just come across Bigfoot himself.
And by we mean Jake and Danny, or Josh and Danny, while Jake sits in a hotel room.
Oh, with a TV and a bed. And plumbing.
No, my plumbing works great out in the woods.
That's my idea of camping. beautiful.
Just to end, because we only have a couple of minutes left, I did want to just bring up very quickly, because this was more about kind of the historical aspect and everything like that. The idea that Bigfoot is associated very often with nature itself, and that there is some belief that it is a
Guardian.
kind of, yeah, like some kind of guardian spirit of the woods, some kind of literal or figurative or spiritual or whatever representation of the woods, and that the woods are kind of disappearing. So it is
The Lorax.
yeah, really kind of the giant Lorax. I mean, when we talked about the Filipino one, that's kind of what he was. He was he was the guardian of the woods. When we talk about the big brother of the Native Americans, that was kind of a guardian spirit. And, you know, I think it's worth mentioning that there are people out there that when they hear Bigfoot, they don't think of something scary. They think of something that is out there protecting a very precious and wonderful aspect of our world, which is the forests, the trees,
The rest
the
of
mountains.
us think it's a cacophony.
Hey, he did it.
You did it.
Thank you.
That's good. You use the word cacophony.
And I use the word cacophony.
Would you like to explain to the people what cacophony is?
A loud and confusing assortment of noises or sounds.
Yeah, that is. I like that. I'm going to use it. I'm going to pretend like I knew it the entire time. No, I think that, I mean, and I think that you threw me off so bad, Jake.
The train is gone.
There's another
Choo-choo.
word, but the definition of the word uses like 2 additional big words, and
Okay.
so I'm really confused.
You got to use it. Use it in a sentence.
It's let me see here. A sycophant.
Sycophant?
Do you know what that is?
I do know what a sycophant is.
So it says a person who acts obsequiously. I don't know how to say that
I
word.
have no idea what that is.
Towards someone important in order to gain advantage.
Big feet.
Big feet is a sycophant.
Let's see, what other random words can I use for this?
Before
Angst. I don't know why that was a big word, but that's what they have in
a
here.
couple recommendations, by the way, just as we continue with this Bigfoot. Number 1 is Harry and the Hendersons. And I this is going to be a requirement of you two, because you're not going to get half of my cultural references when we actually get it if you don't watch Harry and the Hendersons
Harry.
with John Lithgow.
John Lithgow.
A couple
But I'd rather do this perfunctory.
perfunctory.
Everyone save us from our own.
Something done without much care or attention.
Yeah, it means minimum effort. It fits you well, Jake.
Thank you. Thank you. I will now be called Jake the Perfunctuant.
The perfunctuant.
I don't even know if that's how you say that.
Perfunct one.
The other thing that I'm going to mention and recommend that everybody check out is the actual Patterson Gimli film. There are so many reproductions on YouTube. It's really easy to find. And there's so many different people narrating over the top of it, both heavy skeptical and true believers of Bigfoot. I would say try to find the one that has the least amount of that.
Just mute it.
Yeah, literally just kind of.
Does the Bigfoot actually make noise in that film? Because I
No.
don't think I've watched it.
No, then it is completely not. No.
It just has that walk that now is the walk.
The Sasquatch walk.
The walk I'm going to use for our drawing.
Oh, I hope so.
You should do us as the Beatles walking across the sidewalk, but
As Bigfoot.
Sasquatch.
Maybe for future ones we can do that. I already came up with a concept.
Oh, dang it.
You need to watch the Goofy movie,
I
Yes.
love the Goofy movie.
specifically the part with Bigfoot in it.
That really was kind of one of my earliest introductions to Bigfoot was the Goofy movie.
Hey, do you know who does his voice? The person who does Pete.
The person that does Pete does this voice of the Bigfoot?
Yep.
Jim Cummings?
Yep.
Really?
Jim Cummings
So, in
is
other
Bigfoot.
words, Jim Cummings is both Winnie the Pooh and Bigfoot.
And Pete and
I just watched an old Vine, Thomas Sanders. I don't know if you guys remember Thomas Sanders, but he was sitting there and he's like, I think I need to take a poo. Yep, I'm going to go take a poo. And all of a sudden he's stealing Jim Cummings. And Jim Cummings is like, where are we going? Shh, I'm taking you.
Perfect. But yes, steady up, ladies and gentlemen.
I would. One
Or
other thing.
don't.
If
Just go
anybody is
based off
ever,
whatever we say.
if anybody is ever interested in books, and I know that I'm just one of those nerdy book people. Nerdy book people. But Max Brooks actually put out an amazing book called De-Evolution, the first-hand account of the Rainier Sasquatch Massacre.
The Rainier Sasquatch Massacre?
Yes. So if for people that don't know who Max Brooks is the son of Mel Brooks and wrote World War Z.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I didn't know that.
You didn't know that?
They're both crazy.
Yeah, he's the son of Anne Bancroft and that. So anyways, excellent book. World War Z is an excellent book, and everybody should read that. But he also put out a Bigfoot book that is really entertaining. It's 100% fictional, but the reason that I recommend it is it plays off a lot of the heavy tropes of the Bigfoot stories, and it's a really fascinating look at how we view Bigfoot, not only as like a real character, but also in the fictional sense, how we see Bigfoot as a fictional character. So those are my recommendations today. I think it might be
physical fictional character.
I think it is time for final words. So we're going to start with Joshua. What's your final words on this Bigfoot?
I actually
Part
have final
one.
words. So, as we talked about, 1950s became the popular time for Bigfoot, at least the beginning of the Bigfoot craze and or subculture and or cult. But I also want to point something else out.
Do it.
The 1950s was also the end of many circuses and freak shows throughout the United States because of animal cruelty and different things that were going on.
Human exploitation, everything, yeah.
Exactly. Where did these people go?
That is a thought. That is a weird one.
And a lot of these people, such as the people known as like the dog face or the wolf man or all these things, there was a lot of them.
They're actually, you're not wrong. There
and
was
they
a lot of hairy
were
people.
exiled out of civilization communities. And so what's to say that these people that we cruelly exploited because of their genetic mutations are not just big feet?
I like it.
Taken out of the big fish.
Food for thought.
That is interesting. Jake, final words for you.
I think it would be cool if Bigfoot was real.
I'd like to ask him a question.
I would really like to be able to know how he managed to stay out of everyone's limelight and or only be in blurry footage for like everything.
Sure.
But I find it very entertaining to watch a bunch of the videos of the so-called encounters with Bigfoot
Sure.
and everything like that. But I personally just think being in the woods just provides a atmosphere to see things that aren't as they seem. As we've talked about, you know, with either the silence like I experience, and I have an overactive imagination, or, you know, you guys hearing every sound. I just think it's really easy when you're in that environment to perceive something differently than you are actually seeing. So often I wonder if someone sees Bigfoot, if it's like, hey, oh my gosh, it's a Bigfoot grizzly or something else. But at the same time, there are some of those videos you look at and you're just like, wow, if I actually came across something like that, even if it wasn't Bigfoot, if it was like a person or an animal, I'd be running.
Yeah. I'd be
And
running,
tripping
and I would
Josh.
probably be telling the story of the time that I saw Bigfoot.
Yes.
I think that's where my we're going to call it allegiance to the Bigfoot story kind of comes down to is I am skeptical enough and world wary enough to realize that the vast majority, if not all of these stories, are probably the imagination of men running amok, and that Bigfoot more than likely does not exist. But there's a little part of me, that 1% out of my 99%, that kind of sits in the back of my mind and says,
it's his little toe.
it is my little toe of my big feet. I am a Bigfoot. No, it is that 1% that sits in the back of my mind that goes, yes, but what if? What if there really is something out there that you don't know? It is that curiosity, and it's with all of these stories. I think it comes down to me. It is that curiosity that keeps these stories interesting to me. It keeps me reading about them. It keeps me seeking out the dumb videos, even if they are incredibly dumb.
Are you and Josh going to go on a Bigfoot hunt?
No, I am not.
I would never go looking
unless
we do a
Discovery pays me a lot of money, and then absolutely I will. I will grow a beard.
Can you imagine like the people that are sophisticated and going out with all this equipment? Danny goes out with like a rope.
I would.
I'm gonna catch myself a Bigfoot.
I'm gonna get myself good old side Bigfoot. I brought out my bratwurst.
I'd just like to say, if you bring out the Cajun people down on the bayou and hunt Bigfoot, they'd find a Bigfoot.
They would probably
they would shoot a poor 7-foot man and be like, "I found him,
sir. I have gigantism."
Oh my gosh! You killed Shaquille O'Neal. What were you doing?
He was tall. His last words would be, "Get general insurance."
The general will pay for this. No, the very, very final words for me, and then we'll get going. I think that it is important in life to be cautious and careful with any story that you come across, to ask questions, to be skeptical, but leave just a little room for that what if.
Or not.
Or if you are cynical beyond belief, not.
And don't go outside. I think it makes perfect sense.
So everyone, is Bigfoot real? Are we just aliens?
Here's how it goes. Josh, is Bigfoot real? Yes. Jake, is Bigfoot real? No. No. Danny, is Bigfoot real? Maybe. So we've covered every base. The Twaddling Along Podcast says, is Bigfoot real? Yes, no, maybe.
Yes, no, maybe. That's a word we can use. Jake, find that big word. Yes, no, maybe.
Acrimony.
Next week on the Twaddling Along Podcast, we are delving into the human condition. I believe it is Jacob's turn to do the human condition, if I am
Jacob.
I'm going to talk
mistaken.
about forgetfulness because I forgot about that.
That would actually be kind of interesting. I want to know why the heck I can enter into one room and forget completely what I'm doing. That would be very fun.
Ooh.
Or put your keys down and forget.
Exactly.
Or deja vu.
Or deja vu. As a reminder, we are now on pretty much every single podcast list app and or streaming website that you can find it on. The big ones, Spotify, Apple, and YouTube Music. We are on those. If you wouldn't mind, as always, to share this with your friends if you really enjoy what we're doing here, and leave a comment.
Listen to us 4 times.
Listen to us multiple times.
Keep clicking on that video.
Because we are on YouTube now, and you will actually see the podcast show up on our YouTube feed. Be on the lookout for some other things that we are trying and playing around with. It's going to be a really fun year for our Twaddling Alongers. I don't know what we call you people yet, but
Twaddling Alongers.
Yeah,
if
you have an idea of what you want to be called, like
Twaddlers.
For example, you have like people who follow Mark Twain as twits.
Not just a twit, a Mark Twit.
A Mark Twit.
No, but people are, a cult-like following have nicknames, and so
a cult-like following.
Because Josh is already thinking about becoming a cult leader, if you could help him along with what you want to be called, that would be helpful.
Comment on what you would like to be called.
He has the ranch and the dresses available. So
have a wonderful week, everyone.
Bye.
Cacophony.